Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beauty Y'all, the beauty podcast where we talk about skincare, makeup, and everything in between. I'm Sarah, your beauty host and licensed esthetician, and today I'm putting on my old teacher hat for something a little different. We are going back in time for a fun little beauty history lesson. Specifically, a few very real, very weird makeup laws that people actually lived under. These are the kinds of things that sound made up, but aren't. And the best part, we are going to be talking about why those laws existed in the first place and how they weirdly still echo into beauty culture today. Let's kick things off with England, 1770, the anti makeup marriage law. This is probably the most famous weird law in beauty history. In 1770, the British Parliament debated a law stating that women who wore makeup to, quote, deceive men, end quote, into marriage could have their marriages annulled. Yeah, makeup fraud was considered grounds for a legal undoing of your wedding vows. This proposed law, which to be fair, it wasn't fully enforced, it lumped makeup into other tricks. For example, false teeth, wigs, and even use of scents. Basically, anything that made a woman more appealing than she naturally was, it was considered deception. So why did this happen? Well, this was the age of powdered faces, lead based makeup, artificial beauty trends that were certainly gaining popularity, but also criticism. This was a class war, essentially. The upper classes were starting to draw a hard line between natural beauty and painted women. Painted women being a term that often carried judgment or implied more like moral failure. So, in many ways, makeup was still seen as theatrical, which was fine. You know, if you were performing, you kind of got a pass with that. But if it was just every day, it was seen as dishonest. So, fast forward to today, like, no one's annulling marriages over concealer that I know of, but there is an idea of, too much makeup or catfishing. Catfishing still comes up. And another layer that can be added on as well is social media filters. Like these like full glam editing transformations, these like massive contour is reigniting this age-old debate about authenticity in the attraction. So while, the 1770 law sounds bonkers, it's not as far removed from today's beauty discourse as we might like to think. So let's fast forward into Kansas, 1915, the over 44 ban. So this is a gem from early 20th century America. In Kansas, a law was proposed in 1915 that would make it illegal for women over 44 to wear makeup in public. The rationale? Lawmakers claimed it created, quote, false impressions, end quote. Again, you heard it right. Aging women wearing makeup were seen as too persuasive or too deceptive. There was even this, like, moral panic about women luring men with, the rouge and lipstick. The law didn't last, and thankfully it didn't become widespread across America. But again, it speaks volumes about the way aging and beauty were treated in the early 1900s. Youth was idolized, and older women were expected to fade into the background, literally and figuratively. Why does this still matter? Because ageism in beauty hasn't gone anywhere. Marketing still pushes anti-aging products over pro-aging or age-positive skincare. And I can't deny that I'm a part of that. Even as, a beauty influencer, if anyone comes into the chair and they're saying, like, I want to help with these wrinkles or I want to get ahead of this aging, like, I'm not necessarily saying no. So I kind of wonder what my play is in on that. So this is something that I still would kind of like to chew on. Yeah, you have these comments that are like, like she's too old for that, or the makeup's too young for her, or kind of policing women with their makeup, people with their makeup. I mean, that pressure for women to age a certain way still lingers, which is something I think for all of us to think about. All right, let's head to Renaissance Italy, where women wearing bright lipstick, especially red, was sometimes accused of practicing witchcraft. Yep, bold lips could literally get you in trouble with the church. In fact, red lipstick in particular was linked to temptation, sin, and even satanic influence. The thinking was, if a woman could choose to make herself that attractive, surely it had to be demonic, or worse, unnatural. It's important to remember that this was an era of intense religious control and superstition. Beauty, especially when it felt too powerful, was seen as suspicious. So anything that gave a woman or anyone too much allure was threatening. Now, today, I mean, red lipstick is iconic. It's a power move, it's a confidence booster. For many, it's a signature look. But there's still an interesting thread that can linger. Bold makeup, again, being tied to this confidence, being tied to not real, being tied to deception, too loud, too sexual. So the ghost of lipstick as witchcraft, I don't know if it's totally gone. Now, here is something that's really interesting. Red lipstick in history changes all the time. And I went and dug and did a little bit more research. I'm not going to talk about this all the way today, but it's a really interesting read about World War II, and specifically American women. They wore it as protest against Hitler. So, um, ultimately, the red lipstick embraced by women during this time, it like transcended a beauty statement, and it was a visual declaration against the oppression of Nazis. They wanted it to signify like strength, resilience. The US Army commissioned Elizabeth Arden to create a very specific lipstick shade, and this was called Montezuma Red, I'm pretty sure. And this specific red that she created matched the uniforms, like red piping for the female service members. And so it's like red lipstick seen as a rebellion for your country? Good. Red lipstick as a personal choice? Witchcraft. Huh. So with these laws, are they silly? Definitely. Outdated? Yeah. But they can also tell us something fascinating. Beauty has always had rules. What's appropriate? What's too much? Who gets to decide? That can, it's been evolving for centuries. So we don't have laws like this anymore, but we do have unspoken rules that show up in TikTok comments, in job interviews, in wedding days. So I'm just saying, the next time you swipe on lipstick, dab on concealer, know this. You're part of a long, weird, wonderful history. And whether your look is fresh-faced or full glam, it's your face. It's your rules now. And that's it for this beauty history deep dive. If you loved this episode and want more quirky beauty stories, let me know. I had so much fun putting on my old teacher brain to work on this one. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Be kind to yourself and even kinder to your skin. I'll see you next time.